Hello, it's Book Quote Wednesday and the word is quick. Today I'm reading from young adult fantasy The Comeback of the King, the sequel to The Teen, the Witch and the Thief, which I read from last week. My teen hero, Ted, is finding out the hard way that the king can command just about anyone and they will give him unquestioning loyalty, apart apparently from Ted himself. This means that the king wants to get his hands on Ted, and Ted has just had to fight very hard to escape his own family, who are happily prepared to hand him over. So, who can he turn to? Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Ted's feet pounded on the road. I just committed a serious assault. I'm running away from my home. Ask to this king. He paused for breath at the end of Henderson Close and looked back to the lights of home, tense to resume fleeing at a moment's notice. Barry staggered to block the front door. Ted was already running again. He stopped, panting, at the corner of the main road. Arse! He had come this way by instinct. If he had thought about it, he could have taken the town path across the water meadows into Salisbury. Barry could never follow him in the car that way, and Ted could outrun him anywhere. This way, Barry could catch him up in about 30 seconds. Where the hell was he going, anyway? How far did he have to go to get out of the king's reach? The nearest family, his aunt and uncle, were in Blandford. That was half an hour's drive away. Was that far enough? Would the money in his pocket cover the bus fare? Maybe he'd have to hitch there. He had probably just ruined his relationship with his stepfather forever. His mum would still want to talk to him, probably, but he would have to move out, get a room somewhere. No more family, no more cat, no more wireless internet. One small moment of violence had ruined his life forever. Art! And there was still the minor problem of the king. If Ted was the only person in Salisbury immune to His Majesty's commands, then he was the only person who could do something about it. The car was pulling up beside him and his legs had started to run before he even realised what was happening. The driver beeped at him at the same time as Ted recognised the vehicle with a gush of relief. The passenger window slid down and the driver leaned over to call to him. Ted, get in! Ted pulled the door open and fell into the Jaguar next to Malcolm. Can you get me to Blandford? He gasped as he tugged at his seatbelt. Blandford? Malcolm sounded amused as the car pulled away. I suppose I could. What's the problem? Oh, crap. Ted had sworn at Malcolm once and been told very firmly that was the last time he would ever do it. And it had been. I am so screwed. I'm homeless. Barry's never going to take me back. Well, that was quick. I only just dropped you off. They had reached the main roundabout and Malcolm signalled left. The car joined the stream of red tail lights heading down the hill towards the city. Exactly, Ted thought. Malcolm had dropped him off on the other side of the road and had last been seen driving away from Salisbury, heading back home. Why are we going this way? Whatever the trouble is, Ted, I'm sure we can sort it out after the king has finished with you. Stunned betrayal was like a jolt to the heart. No, Ted screamed. He is the king, Ted. He's told us to bring you to him. Malcolm's voice and profile, he never took his eyes off the road when he was driving, were calm and collected. He is the king. That was exactly what Inspector Stewart had said. It sounded so eminently reasonable. He is the king, therefore he must be obeyed. Ted studied the road in desperation. The moment Malcolm stopped, he would be out of the car. Unfortunately, even though there was a queue of traffic, the car kept moving. And you're my employer. I think you'll find it's implicit in your terms and conditions. You're my friend, Ted whimpered. Well, Malcolm almost seemed embarrassed. Thank you, Ted. I'm flattered you think of me that way. But he is the king. Inspiration struck like a voice in his head whispering, You're my counsel. Malcolm cocked his head thoughtfully and took just a little longer than before to answer. As I think I said earlier, I was never formally retained. Ted thrust a crumpled £10 note under his nose. Malcolm squinted down at it, then gently pushed Ted's hand away and signalled to pull over. How interesting. Ted tensed, ready to fling the door open the moment the car was still. If Malcolm wanted to continue this conversation, he could do it with Ted out on the pavement. But then a muted click ran through the car, more felt than heard, and Ted's heart sank even further. Malcolm had put the central locking on. Ted twisted back to the dashboard and scanned the lit-up controls. There were a lot of buttons to press. One of them was the central locking, but he wasn't sure which one. Meanwhile, Malcolm was holding the banknote in both hands, studying it as if it were the first time he had seen a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. What's the time, Ted? Puzzled, Ted glanced at the clock on the dashboard. A bit after 6? Malcolm paused to collect his thoughts. That's what it's like. I asked. You told me. You didn't quibble or argue. It was the smallest of favours, easily within your power to grant without the slightest loss or inconvenience, and so you told me. It was the same with the king. Bring Ted Gorse to the White Bear. I just knew that was what I had to do, and I knew where you were, and so I came to get you. It was as simple and as natural as you telling me the time. No reason to think twice about it. He paused again. Ted still didn't quite relax. He was still with one eye looking for the locking control. Until you just broke the spell. I wonder how you did that. You reminded me of one of my core beliefs, that every man has the right to representation. But presumably you reminded the inspector of her job. Ted nodded vigorously, and yet it had no effect. What changed this time? Ted didn't care. He just wanted to get out of the car. I paid you? He asked. You did something. Malcolm tucked the note away into an inside pocket. Just in case this really is all that stands between tyranny and freedom, I'll hang on to it. So, what do we do now? He sat back in his seat and drummed his fingers on the wheel. Then he reached out and pressed something, and Ted felt the car unlock itself. You're free to get out if you like, Ted, or I can drive you to Blandford. But do you know that the king's influence doesn't stretch that far? Ted bit his lip. No, I don't. I'd love to meet him. Malcolm drummed his fingers again. Ask him who he is, where he's from. But supposing he regains his ability to command me, or supposing he has enough other people under his spell to overpower me by force, or overpower you. And they would, believe me. If he told us to hang you from the nearest lamppost, I honestly believe we would. It would never have crossed our minds until he told us, and then we would do it as easily as he just told me the time. Dear Lord, he whispered, that's terrifying. It wasn't the thought of Ted being hung from the nearest lamppost that terrified him, Ted thought sourly. It was the bigger picture. A world where the only law was the king's whim. That was what terrified the ex-barrister. And it didn't make him very happy either. You could phone him, he suggested. Yes. Malcolm pulled his phone from his inside pocket and looked thoughtfully at it. Then he smiled and cocked an eyebrow at Ted. You were trying to make a joke, weren't you? Ted has a friend. Remember, you can buy my books at www.benjeeps.com. See you next time.